There I was, minding my own business after a long day of yard work and house cleaning last Saturday. I checked my phone to leisurely browse memes and whatnot on Twitter of Time, and then, what's this? Another Amazon Prime Moiraine teaser drop? On a Saturday? What's going on? Then I see what's in the background. Our first look at a freaking Trolloc. Let's get into it. Spoiler warning. This video will discuss minor details related to characters, monsters, and storylines that are revealed in the first 10 chapters or so of the first Wheel of Time book, The Eye of the World. Nothing too major, but if you wish to remain completely spoiler-free, this video may not be for you. Where to begin? So much has been said about this new clip, but first I want to address my biggest concern. My goal is to stay on Amazon's good side. The tweet was released on an official German Amazon Prime account on May 8th, 2021, like 8 to 10 hours before anybody seemed to notice, but it was eventually taken down. My guess is that it wasn't supposed to be released on a Saturday, and especially not by that German Twitter account. But it was up for several hours after Twitter of Time discovered it, which gave many other channels time to discuss it and show it, including the Dusty Wheel, where they did an impromptu livestream. We've now seen breakdowns and reactions from What Up, Wheel of Time Theory, Nameless, and others. They all showed the teaser. It's out there. Should I or should I not show it? Who am I kidding? Let's watch this thing. I give you a slightly newer Moiraine teaser and our first look at a Trolloc.
Do not underestimate the women in this tower. Do not underestimate the women in this tower.
Okay, before we discuss the more important elements of the Trolloc in the background, let's discuss the CEO in the room. Yes, I'm talking about Moiraine's clothing. So much has been said about this. And I agree with the fandom consensus that we just don't have enough context here to make a solid guess about why it looks like Moiraine is wearing some sort of pantsuit. Memes of Moiraine as Hillary Clinton have been created. I love this art from Cold Witch. It's been a great time. Genuinely, honestly, my first thought when I saw this was confusion at her wardrobe. I literally said out loud, "Why is she wearing a pantsuit?" I showed it to my daughter a couple of days later with no context, and she said the exact same thing. It's hard not to see CEO Moiraine in this clip. Here are my thoughts and opinions about the wardrobe. I think the Moiraine teaser that we got back in March was originally going to be this clip, but then I think they got cold feet and opted to show the close-up teaser instead. I think the reason Amazon didn't originally post this clip is likely because they probably knew people would overanalyze the costume. They probably didn't want our first look at Moiraine to be overshadowed by an odd costume choice. That said, why is it odd? Why does it feel kind of wrong? Again, we can only speculate, and I'm certain it will all be made clear once we have more context and can see this shot as part of the final sequence in the TV show. I've seen people say that they think this is not even an official shot from the show, and that this shot was just created for promotional purposes. I totally disagree with this. We know from the previous Moiraine teaser that the voiceover was recorded for the teaser, and that it's not actually dialogue from the show. However, there is strong evidence to suggest that the visuals for this shot were carefully crafted by VFX artists, and that this is very likely a final or close to final shot in the actual show, wig malfunction aside. I'll discuss this more in a bit, but I'm very sure this is the costume that Moiraine is going to be wearing during this scene in the actual show. So, pantsuit jokes aside, what is the deal with Moiraine's costume? I've seen theories that she's actually in some sort of modern getup. After all, the Wheel of Time story is supposed to take place in our distant future, so why can't she be wearing a sort of futuristic blazer or power suit? I've seen other people argue that no, the Wheel of Time is a medieval fantasy, and characters should look like they come out of Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings or other fantasy epics. I've seen some people say that it's clearly Moiraine's undergarments, like a silk shift and or a slip, covered by an unbuttoned cloak or dress. Some people think the show is ruined just because of this one out-of-context clip. My favorite two explanations come from a caller on the Dusty Wheel who suggested that Moiraine's costume is inspired by traditional Korean clothing, and another from Katie Sadai on Instagram, who shows compelling evidence that this is just an unbuttoned riding dress or cloak. The Bard of the Red Hand, aka my friend Vance, he tweeted more details related to the traditional Korean clothing called the hanbok. I really like this concept simply because it would make sense to have Lan and Moiraine's wardrobes thematically matched. Not to say that Moiraine should look like she's wearing Korean clothing exactly, but I like the idea of the two of them feeling like a pair with similar styles. After all, they have been together for nearly 20 years now, and we know from the Lan teaser that he's wearing Korean-inspired clothing. Katie Sadai suggests that it makes sense to have the costumes in the Wheel of Time feel more like Victorian-era styles. I like what she said on Instagram. It's not a blazer, people. It's a riding jacket unbuttoned. She goes on to discuss in more detail how she feels like the costumes are influenced by the, quote, dress reform movement of the 1880s. And she draws parallels to the women of the Wheel of Time and women's rights. I really like that idea. Actually, I think many of us have imagined that the Wheel of Time takes place during the Middle Ages or during an Arthurian-style medieval era. But based on the technology and costumes described by Robert Jordan, it's actually more likely that this world is on the brink of an industrial revolution and it takes place in a more late 1800s Victorian-inspired era. Another user on Twitter, whose name I can't pronounce, shows evidence that the cloak or unbuttoned riding jacket that Moiraine is wearing is the same costume that we saw Rosamund Pike wearing in a leaked photo from several months ago. I won't show the full photo, but look at the details near the collar and how they match. My conclusion, besides the fact that I've talked way too long about her dress, is that this is very likely winter night, and Moiraine was probably lying in bed or about to go to sleep, just about ready to take off her earrings when the Trollocs attacked. She probably threw on her nearest cloak or riding jacket over her shift and undergarments and ran out to fight, not even bothering to button it up. This also explains the missing Kisera on her forehead. Speaking of Winter Night, I was already convinced that this teaser and the land teaser took place during the battle with the Trollocs in Emond's Field on Winter Night. But this seals it for me. The Dusty Wheel posted this recently on Twitter, showing how the first look at the Winespring Inn matches up with this shot. Okay, let's talk about what actually matters, the background action. After my initial reaction to Moraine's dress, which really only lasted a half a second, I was immediately drawn to the action in the background. We got a first look at a Trolloc. I was so excited when I saw this. The Trolloc is huge. It has ram's horns. Some people think they can see hooves, although I think the Trolloc might just be wearing large boots. It doesn't even matter. It looks awesome to me, even though it's quite blurry and hard to make out details. Adding some contrast and removing color helps to more clearly see the reflections on the armor. Some people thought it looked kind of like a goofy naked Wookiee costume, but it seems to have quite a bit of armor to me. What do you think? There was also some controversy about whether or not all Trollocs will be hairy like this appears. I really hope we get to see a variety of very different Trollocs. Wouldn't it be amazing to see some skinnier, hairless Trollocs, or even something beyond RJ's descriptions like a tentacled Trolloc or a lizard face? It looks to me like Lan is fighting one or maybe two Trollocs in the background. This matches up the last two teasers very well. Adding some contrast to the Lan character shows that he's definitely wearing the same looking clothing that Lan is wearing in his teaser. Just look at how the belts match. It looks like I was also right about Lan and Moiraine fighting back to back. I love this. I love that Moiraine seems completely unbothered by the chaos around her, and she's allowing her warder to keep her protected, while she embraces the One Power and prepares to channel at the Trollocs. Could the bluish light be lightning, or her preparing to throw fireballs? I can't wait to find out. To me, this shot feels very much like it's the first time where we'll see someone embracing the One Power in the show. It feels like the shot is intentionally heavily focused on Moiraine and her concentration. Some people have said it doesn't match up with the books because Moraine's eyes are closed, which makes it more difficult to channel or see the weaves. But I think she's just calming herself and ignoring the chaotic battle around her, removing all emotion to embrace the source. I think she doesn't channel until she opens her eyes. I'm also guessing that showing channeling or embracing the source won't always be this dramatic in the show, but they're trying to visually convey that what she is doing requires concentration and calm in this moment, and that it's very important. I think it will make a great contrast to the chaos of the battle. Overall, I really like this clip, but when looking at the Trolloc in the background, something felt off to me. I was surprised when I heard other people discussing this clip and saying they were certain that the Trolloc is practical and not CGI. To me, it immediately stood out as a CGI animated creature and not a real person in a costume. I've now watched this clip so many times using different filters and removing grain and adding contrast and flipping it. I even posted a short clip on Twitter, and my tweet was featured on winteriscoming.net, which was a real honor. But honestly, after staring at this for so long, I just can't decide if the Trolloc is CGI or practical anymore. At first, I was convinced that the shot was reversed. The weird way that the Trolloc slides backwards just doesn't feel real to me, and I think that's why I originally thought it was a CGI animation. Some people have said that this could just be some weird weather effect from the wind or from Moraine's channeling that's causing the Trolloc to slide and stumble, like she's creating a sort of vortex or something. Still, it just doesn't look right to me. Playing it in reverse makes the Trolloc's movement feel more realistic to me, but it makes the person who's fighting the Trolloc, probably Lan, feel less natural in his movement. The Trolloc appears to slash at Lan, and Lan ducks, and that is probably what causes the Trolloc to stumble for a moment before righting itself and continuing the fight. I think Lan might be preoccupied by more than one Trolloc just off screen. The problem for me is this little part here, where Lan appears to very suddenly burst onto the screen when the shot is played in reverse. The conclusion that I've come to is that this is obviously a composited VFX shot. In other words, multiple elements that were all shot or animated separately, either on a green or blue screen or in a computer or a combination of those things, were then compiled or composited together for this final shot. Some have pointed out that the reason it feels unnatural is because the frame rate for the fight in the background and Moiraine in the foreground don't appear to match. This very well could be the case, and is probably common in VFX, as different elements are created by different artists and then compiled by a compositor. I think they wanted the Moiraine shot to almost feel slow while keeping the background chaos faster. Anyway, no matter how this was compiled, I think there is a moment when animation or keyframes were added to Lan to make him sort of appear to jump into the shot quickly. This is done by taking an element like footage of Lan on a green screen, for example, and then adding keyframes to move the keyed layer of footage from one place to another. I do think the shot is reversed, and even when you play it the way it was originally presented, it looks like Lan moves too quickly to be natural. I could be totally wrong, and this might be a completely practical shot that was all done in camera at the same time, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. Overall, I just love this clip, and I'm sure that some of the confusing stuff will make more sense in the context of the full show. This is the problem with only giving us minute short clips. We tear them apart frame by frame and overanalyze everything without more details. I'm obviously very guilty of this, as you can see if you've made it this far. I think if this shot had been released as part of a larger teaser, we probably wouldn't have been so critical of things like the costume or the Trolloc. I think if we were to analyze the VFX in shots of even finished, super big budget movies, the way that we put these under a microscope, we'd find all kinds of inconsistencies and problems. This is why VFX shots work better when shown in a sequence as part of a full scene with music, sound effects, dialogue, and editing. One last thing. The translation from the German Amazon Prime tweet said that the show would be available soon, but my understanding is that they used a word that, when spoken in the German language, means very soon, like in the next 2 or 3 months soon. Exciting, right? We also have unconfirmed but very likely accurate information from WatchSeries.com that they just officially wrapped shooting for Season 1. I'm super excited for this, and I think we might see a trailer and/or a release date very soon. So, what do you think? What did I miss? Here's hoping we get more warning before the next one. Special thanks to my amazing Patreon supporters. My 7-year-old computer recently bit the dust, which is why you haven't seen as many videos from me in recent days. But thanks to my Patreon supporters, I was able to purchase a new machine, and I should be able to ramp up the release of more videos again. Please remember to like and subscribe, and check out my Watt 101 videos and other deep dives as well. Peace.